Welcome to Patient Zero. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Patient Zero shares a focus on personal, career, and spiritual relationship growth and sustainability. The term Patient Zero generally describes a point of origin for any experience, event, or entity. From the moment of our creation as a spirit of origination, each of us becomes the patient zero of our lifetime journey. On Patient Zero, you'll hear tips and takeaways for healthier daily interactions to achieve greater success at home and work. You'll also learn how prophecy can educate, entertain, and edify, with an awareness about prophetic events, people, and circumstances, to help you know more and prepare for God's purpose-filled plans. There's a commonality of themes everyone encounters in life. These lessons can be both catalysts for or outcomes from our choices. Think of it this way. With every choice you make, you are responding to one or more of these 5 motivators: love, want, need, status, or fear of loss. These are the 5 emotional sparks behind every decision we make. And one or more of these is always behind our efforts, by our actions, in response to the people, events, and circumstances we encounter in daily life. We never decide to act without measurable effect from one or more of these 5, for each is at the core of our desires. Struggle is the constant of the human condition, regardless of influences. And along every path exists or is experienced struggle. Emotional stress is often the fallout or result of these struggles, manifested from choices or decisions rooted in these 5 motivators. You see, mankind has yet to fully understand or embrace evidence that repeatedly reveals prolonged existence, dependent and or codependent on us working together. Our very existence is defined by differences as communities strive to resolve issues. However, cooperative resolution seldom comes easy or willingly. Yet our differences, hand in hand with technology, continues to make the world go round and keep civilization moving forward. However, emotional stress and struggle, more specifically why struggle exists and how to reduce or eliminate it, remains a bane of our existence. You see, the universe is always in balance, and so too the fundamentals of life. Pains are counterbalanced by scope and structure of progress. Do we have pain and suffering? Yes. Will we always have pain and suffering? Yes. Why? Well, it's in our nature to strive for success as well as survival. And in doing so, we produce actions that offer different choices and different decisions. However, the byproduct of our human inertia includes stress, struggle, pain, and conflict. Now that's the global view. But what about you and me? What about each of us? We only have effective control over our responses to the people, events, and circumstances that we come into contact with on a daily basis. It's in our small sphere of influence that we identify as our life that we can learn how to reduce this daily struggle, and why it is we don't realize how much suffering can be eliminated or sidestepped. You see, although answers are relatively easy to address, this why is more easily understood than the how it takes to achieve it. We each have the power to decide what our response will be in any given situation. And as such, experience can become our prime motivator and prime indicator. For it reminds us of what we already know, One or more of the possible outcomes from any previous action that we have experienced can become familiar with our past suffering, caused or experienced from previous decisions in similar situations. Why did we choose that response? And what were its consequences? The why is prompted and answered by expectations of a specific result. The how is a little more complex. The more expectant or anticipated the outcomes of our decisions, the better prepared we are to tackle this how. How of actually reducing or eliminating struggle from our daily life. Now, at this point, it's important to remember that pain and suffering are generally encapsulated as emotional stress or discomfort, associated with manifested actions by our choices and decisions. The why, however, determines the action of our choice, and the how is its implementation. You see, ultimately, this process either contributes to additional stress and struggle, or it puts us on a path of reduction and possible elimination of those same struggles and stress. The differences in how we cope or adjust to each future decision in light of the outcomes we already know or have experienced from past decisions and conditions. Even if we were growing and moving forward, meaning less stress, fewer struggles, by heeding and then avoiding past behaviors and choices, we now have new opportunities to reduce or eliminate struggle in our daily life. How do we do this? First, by making better choices. More informed decisions based on past experiences and outcomes we already know. It's been said, experience is the best teacher, but only if we actually learned from that experience. How we assimilate enough information and enough emotional fortitude to make better or more positive future choices in similar situations becomes the key. So, how do we do this? By not repeating behaviors and choices we already know from prior activities that will, or most likely will, result in negative, harmful, or hurtful outcomes. You see, first comes the emotion, then the choice, then the action, and finally the results. And we know that the why by expectation, and we know the how by choice. And we can now know the future actions that produce results. Differences between positive and negative outcomes that either dissipate or exacerbate our daily struggle. And therefore, any emotional stress associated with a particular choice or outcome. You see, making positive choices in future situations based on prior first-hand knowledge allows for review prior to execution. We learn to do this with each corresponding life lesson thrown at us or encountered. And with each succeeding or successful lesson learned, we can now avoid negative impacts by accepting or adjusting the previous known positive result. I know, it sounds easy and it may seem hard, but actually it's easier than you might think. It's simply an exercise in mental gymnastics prior to taking action. Recall and remembrance tempered with a dose of new possibility. This is what puts us in charge of deciding or choosing a new or different way to respond. Because ultimately, it's our responsibility to choose more wisely than we might have in the past. This is what growth is all about. Did our prior choice result in pain and suffering, heartache, heartbreak, costly or divisive ramifications? Do we want those same outcomes and results again Yes or no? You see, when we know and understand why, we become better prepared to implement and accept how. And with these two in combination, future progress will always result in fewer struggles and therefore less emotional stress. You see, the more we apply this systematic process, the more profoundly simple avoiding struggle becomes, as it's no longer repeated and suffered through. We learn it's easier to walk around holes of adversities than trying to dig ourselves out. So, our new first recourse is to draw upon previous experiences or efforts made, to make each new choice or decision a more positive outcome. You see, it's always easier to learn a lesson from previous experiences that revealed negative fallout. With our first learned responses from past events firmly rooted in our mind, we can now take steps that employ power to alert us of new potential negative consequences, even before we pull the trigger on a decided course of action. So, what is this next step of understanding? It's the gift of premonition. Premonition is now provided by new spiritual grounding, and it's available for us to know and use with our now fully reactivated spirit of origination. You see, when we reactivate our spiritual essence to its full capacity, and then call upon this new spirit within us, the spirit of truth, every time we need relief from a decision that we're about to make, we now discover a preview of possible negative outcomes for any future choice and decision. The Spirit of Truth reveals these to us before we actually take action from a desire, even before we commit to it, even before we respond to it, even before we act upon it. How? Well, you see, as full-fledged children of God, once again, by reactivating our spirit of origination, we now possess the right and privilege to call upon His reactivated spirit within us, His Spirit of Truth. We can call upon that spirit and expect a response every time we ask, before venturing into new or repeated options. You see, it's through His spiritual guidance, now reactivated within our spirit of origination, that we are reminded of previous outcomes from our present or past in our Life 101 manifested actions. Now, we still possess free will to choose which path we will travel. However, by calling on our spiritual counselor, we are given strength to resist actions that we now innately know are not in our best interest. We're sort of given a heads up before any current decision is put into action as to which choice we might employ that will cause emotional suffering as part of its consequence, or how we can avoid that suffering and avoid that negative consequence. As always, the choice to stop or go ahead is ours. And recognition to acknowledge and embrace this nuance of new wisdom resides in our new life, Life 101A, reactivated spirit of origination, which now possesses God's Spirit of Truth actively living within us again. Now, you might have likely been experiencing lifetime of consequences and outcome in Life 101. If you haven't reactivated your spirit of origination, you are living Life 101. Choices and decisions grounded in right and wrong, based on what's in it for me and what's the best outcome for me if I choose the world's ways. How do you know this? You need only reflect on how your journey has been up to now. But now you have the opportunity to decide if a future without stress, struggle, pressure, and conflict in Life 101A is more desirable path for you or not. I invite you to make some small changes in your life today that will pay big dividends tomorrow. Thanks for joining me today. On Patient Zero, we share key takeaways for growth-filled living. If you know someone who could benefit from today's show, please share it with them. If today's show has been interesting for you, please give us a rating and review. To know more about my work, I invite you to visit my website, branchisole.com, my Substack page, branchisole.substack.com, and my YouTube channel, Branch Isole. Substack subscribers also receive a thought for today every morning, 2 spiritual Christianity prophecy alerts every week, and an open mic poem short story every Saturday, as well as access to archived Patient Zero episodes, informative series, and articles. Today's episode has been sponsored by Mana'u Publishing and my book, Messages in a Bottle. If you're interested in knowing more about spiritual growth, Messages in a Bottle is the book or ebook for you. All my books are available at the website and from Amazon. On the website, you'll find books, ebooks, and gift merchandise. Again, thanks for joining me today. Join me again next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at branchisole.substack.com for our next episode titled Discerning Information. Until then, keep growing and be in the world, not of the world.